Ian Lavery. I'm the Member of Parliament for Blythe in Ashington, and it covers Blythe, the Blythe Town, Ashington, Newbiggin, Guythurst, Stakeford, Bedlington, Camas, Bedlington Station. It's a new constituency. It was the former Blythe and Wansbeck constituencies combined.
So, first of all, how often do you actually use the public transport in the area yourself?
I use it loads, man. Either from Ashington, New train station, Morpeth train station. I use a metro. I don't use the buses that much, to be honest, but I use then I jump on the train, the LNER Express to London. I get off the train at London. I get the tube to the Commons. So I use public transport very, very regularly, whether it be like in the area or heading to the Parliament in London. Use it all the time.
Fair enough. So the next question for me would be: do you think the Northumberland Line's been the success that has it been as successful as you expected it to be?
Of course. Listen, man, I've been campaigning for the Ashington, Blythe and Tyne Line, as it was called, right up till a couple of years ago. It's changed its name for political reasons. I've been a campaigner to get this line back into operation for decades. Since I was a young kid, I always knew that there was a desperate need to connect South East Northumberland to the city. So to see it, up and running is fantastic. As I say, I've been campaigning along with a lot of other people to get this. And is it successful? Of course, it's successful. I think that the recent figures are suggesting that more than 400,000 journeys have taken place from Ashington to Newcastle Central Station since it began its second life. So that really is successful. I think it's surpassed all predictions and projections from whether it be Northern, whether it be Northumberland County Council, anybody else. It's really surpassed that, and it's fantastic, man.
Well, going on with that, do you think the line should be extended up the Newbiggin and Linemouth as well?
I think the line, we'll be campaigning for the line to be extended through Woodhorn. I mean, what a great stop that would make, and people would be coming from all of other places. So you get off at Woodhorn, into Woodhorn Museum, and into the eastern part of Ashington, and then certainly into Newbiggin. That would be the next priority. That would be, can you imagine that, getting from Newbiggin to Newcastle or Newcastle to Newbiggin on the new train line? It's got to be worth every penny, every cent for people in our region.
And also, you got to think about Wansbeck hospitals in that area as well. From there, you've only got buses to the likes of Ashington, Blythe, Alnwick, where if you put that new line in, you can get people from Wansbeck Hospital.
And there's a stop at Woodhorn. The track runs through Woodhorn Museum. You're only less than a third of a mile from the main hospital, Wansbeck General Hospital. So that's extremely important, to be invaluable for people visiting the hospital from different parts of the region, as well as having the leisure investment in terms of Woodhorn Colliery Museum. It would be invaluable. And then moving on to Newbiggin. Newbiggin is a wonderful seaside town. It's a smashing place to visit, with massive promenade, nice shops, nice cafes, nice restaurants, a few nice pubs. Why wouldn't people not flock towards the northeast coast if they were given the opportunity via the Northumberland Line?
But if you think about it, as I read it, I was reading a book about the old railway lines a few weeks ago, and I read that Newbiggin was the third biggest port for, I think it was Corn, after London and Hull. So it just shows that there was the potential there, and it still is now.
Well, it was, when you look at the history books, Newbigin played an essential part in terms of the shipping infrastructure. Huge port at one time, and you're right what you say. It was with regards to corn, and there was also coal and other exports there in Newbigin. So the history's here. I'm not so sure whether that would be of that importance. What is important is to get people into the region, into the likes of Newbigin, and the beaches there, the facilities are there, like I've just mentioned. It's a smashing place to take your family. It's a smashing place to visit, and if you've got them extensions onto the from Ashington, Woodhorn, and Newbigin, it would be fantastic.
Well, the next question is specifically about Ashington train station. Do you know how long the redevelopment is going to take?
Not being redeveloped. It's Wansbeck Square that's being redeveloped, which has been there since the early 70s, and it's been a long time coming, believe me. I think there's a few issues with regards to the reconstruction, what it should look like, what it should be. I've got some concerns about perhaps what's the best use of that land just outside the train station, because again, huge potential. And with the train station basically outside the doors of whatever could be built, whatever could be constructed there, it could be again a fabulous trail for individuals either coming in or leaving the area.
Right, especially with the other two platforms. I know they're not in use at the minute, but they could look into using those as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got the two other platforms in Bedlington. It's such a shame, that the likes of Bedlington and Babeside haven't been opened at the same time as the rest of the line. I feel so sorry, you're going through Bedlington, Bedlington station there, and people are desperate to use the train, and they're waving at other people who have got it. And there's a little bit of resentment there now, and I understand that, by the way, and I share the frustrations of individuals in Bedlington, and I have been campaigning, as I said before, for ages, because it would have been much better had the line have been opened from from Ashington right through the central station, all stations open, but for whatever reason. And I am, how can I say it? I do believe there's been huge issues, but let's hope we can get the new stations open as soon as we possibly can, and it'll be great,
Just look at the effect Newsham had.
Sorry?
Just look at the effect when Newsham station opened. The amount of people that you've used that.
Well, I mean, as I say, I use that line regularly, and there's always lots of people on, it doesn't matter where. In fact, you've got your black and white shirt on there. There's people on match day, seriously, getting on the train at Seaton Delaval to come north to Ashington to head back into Newcastle, because if they didn't get on the train heading north, the train that's heading into Newcastle is always ram jam full. Right. So there's occasions when the train pulls up, particularly if they've only got two carriages on, when the train pulls up in Ashington, where there's lots of people you can hardly get on. So that's how successful the line is. That is during peak times, and particularly when Newcastle's playing there.
Well, the next one for me is, I don't know if you were aware, but in December, when the timetable changes, Northern are actually cutting Morpeth to Carlisle trains. I understand it's not your constituency, but would you like to work with your local MPs to see if they can change that? Because instead of all Morpeth trains going all the way to Carlisle, they're actually going to cut them to Newcastle, and then have a separate service running from Newcastle to Carlisle.
Well, of course, I mean, just because it's not my constituency, it was my constituency, but a lot of my constituents, a lot of friends and colleagues and residents, constituents, still use the train route from Morpeth. It's a major transport infrastructure station. And any cuts, I would oppose. And I think that the only reason they're cutting these journey times is to try and shave off seconds for the LNER line from Edinburgh to London. Who gives a damn whether you can get to London from Morpeth a minute or so earlier, or back from London to Edinburgh a minute or so earlier? What we should have is a proper thought out people's railway in the best interest of the people who need the transport links, not shaving time off for people getting to various parts right across the country. It's ludicrous.
Well, there could be something as simple as sending them, instead of sending them down the East Coast Main Line, send them via Hepscott that way. Then you double the timings on the Northumberland Line, and you still have those trains. Yes, they wouldn't call it Cramlington, but there could be something sorted there. Maybe Lumo could start stopping there. I don't know.
I think there's a whole number of options. It's just who's willing to put the plans forward, who's going to finance the plans, and who's actually interested, who's basically interested in the passengers who might use it, rather than the profits that might be made. That's the difference. It's making money over people. People are more important than profits.
Well, the final question on the railways at this point is there also the potential to extend the Northumberland Line into Blythe Town Centre? I did read somewhere that would be pretty beneficial as well.
I think it probably would. When you think about the line, it skirts Blythe, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, in Ashington, yeah, in the centre of the town. Mind, you know, in Ashington, there's if you want to use the train station, there's places like North Seaton where you've either got to get a bus, or you've got to get a taxi, or you've got to walk for a considerable length of time. Same as Blythe. Blythe, it's through Babeside, it skirts Newsham, and really, to get to Newsham, you need, again, an alternative or an additional mode of transport to get to the train station. And I read, I'm sure I'm right in this, by the way, the original train route actually was in the absolute centre of Blythe Town at one stage. So, you know, it's been done before. It'll cost a lot of money, but again, what I'll say again is we should be looking at the best interests of the people in the county rather than profits. And it's something which I think we discussed at length for years to come. I cannot see the train line going into Blythe at this moment in time, but it should be an ambition.
Oh, so next, moving on to the buses. Do you agree with Kim McGuinness's idea to take the buses back into her control, the Angel network that she's come up with?
Of course, I believe that the all modes of transport should be taken into public control. I believe in public ownership. I believe that you cannot control what you don't own, and you cannot set prices. You cannot basically do anything unless you own not just the mode of transport, but the infrastructure as well, the lines, the stations, the signals. And of course, I agree with that. And I think Kim McGuinness is doing a good job with respect to transport in the region.
Well, next, then, should there be more local buses between the likes of Lymouth, Cresswell, and other smalls and towns and villages? And should the public get a say on what routes they want?
Years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I went to North Blythe, Camas, in my patch, and I got a bus. There was only 2 buses left North Blythe. One at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, and then one at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then they get from North Blythe to the hospital at Cramlington, which is about 3 miles. Maybe it's 4 miles. Took 2.5 hours.
Well, you've got to get the bus into Bedlington first, haven't you? Then from there.
The bus, the route it went through was just unreal. And there's that many little towns and villages isolated, the likes of Langest, Cresswell, as you mentioned, different places. They're all isolated, and unless you've got a car, or you're able to use a cycle or whatever, then that is the case. We need to have a root and branch look at the routes. But again, like it was the buses were privatised by the Tory government, and when there was suitable accessibility in these towns and villages, the profits weren't there under private business, under the privatisation. So people just cut them off, not even giving one second thought to the people, the old man or the old woman or the persons who needed to use maybe to get access to Bedlington, to get access to Ashington or Blythe or whatever. And that wasn't a consideration. It was money.
Like at the minute in Morpeth, the road up to Kirkhill from the High Street past the clock tower is closed. So the number 2 is only terminating at Morpeth, and Liberty Coaches are currently running a minibus to and from Kirkhill to the bus station. So we need to look at some of these smaller companies and say, look, can you offer the service? If you can, do you want to?
What you asked before is, do you think that ordinary people, local people should have? Of course they should. People should have a say in the local transport infrastructure. And listen, they're never consulted. We're always given facts and figures with how dismal these bus routes are and how much of a cost it is to these private companies. We've got to make sure that if we're intent on ensuring equality to people in these smaller places. You mentioned Morpeth, Morpeth isn't a small place, and it has got pretty good in terms of bus, the bus infrastructure, the railway lines. There's many more places a lot worse off in the likes of Morpeth, I've got to say. And where possible, we've got to make sure that the companies who can provide the access are given the opportunity of doing so. But if they're going to be subsidised, they need to be licensed by a local government, and they need to be controlled by local government.
Well, finally, questions-wise, can you give me an overview of any future transport plans you would like to see in our area?
Well, I mean, we need an integrated transport plan for. Let us just talk about South East Northumberland, because as we see, what we've got now, we've got Ashington, we've got Bedlington when it opens, and then we've got 2 stations at Blythe, Babeside, and Newsham. Either side of that railway line, that's where the businesses are, that's where the leisure facilities are, that's where the high streets are. We need to have much more of an integrated transport service, including regular buses, shuttle buses from the different parts of the towns to the train stations. We need, obviously, we've got some fantastic, and I'm not talking about this, but fantastic new cycle lanes right the way through the constituency now, which is helpful, but only helpful to them that want to use the bikes and who are capable of using their bikes. So we've got to make sure that people aren't isolated, despite the fact that we've got these new stations, which are really welcome, by the way. We've got to make sure that people can actually get from the farthest point in Ashington, the farthest point in Blythe, in Bedlington. They can get to the train station to use the train station. When they come back, there's also the opportunity of getting back home. And it's good to see at this point in time that they certainly in Ashington and Blythe, that the car parking is pretty good, and it's free of charge as well. So that's a good added incentive as well. We've got to cater for those people who feel isolated, the elderly and the frail, people who, disabled people, young people, old people. We've got to make sure that they're not part of this new train line, this new infrastructure. We've got to make sure that that's the case, and it might cost more money, but that's the only way it'll be wholly successful.
And if you're thinking about it as well, we also need to maybe look into timetabling. Like, as a child, I used to collect bus timetables. I have quite a few of them still, like old Go North East ones like that. Arriva don't even make bus timetables anymore. I picked one up at Morpeth for the 777, which was produced by Newcastle Airport. Where what happens if an elderly person who doesn't understand how to use a computer or a phone wants the times, they just haven't got them?
Well, that's just one problem. If you look, I mean, if I look at my mailbag, there's lots of people from Blythe and Ashington, the constituency, who write on a regular basis, who, simply say they stand waiting on a bus to go into Newcastle or to go into different parts of South East Northumberland for work or for appointments, whatever, and the bus just simply doesn't turn up. That's a huge issue as well. So I do understand that. How does anybody get, if you cannot use the internet, how do you get a timetable? It's ridiculous. They used to put them on the lamppost and the bus shelters. I'm not sure if that's the case anymore. But we've got to make it easy for people to enjoy transport, enjoy the experience of transport. It should be something which we all enjoy. And I think the fact that the new electric buses that have been introduced have got Wi-Fi connection, and the up-to-date mode cons, cutting-edge technology is to be welcomed. But we've got to make sure that it's inclusive, not exclusive.
Is that the electric buses in Blythe or in Newcastle?
The electric buses, I think they're in Blythe and Ashington.
I didn't know they'd been introduced yet, actually.
Well, you know what it is. You might be right, but I've been to Arriva and I've seen the buses. I've been on them, and I just understood. When I've said I've been on them at the station. I thought they had been introduced, but forgive me if they haven't. But if they haven't, when they do, they make a huge difference.
I knew they were coming.
You used to work on them.
No, I said I knew they were coming. I just didn't know when.
Well, check it out. You might be right, but when they do come, I mean they're fantastic. What I would say that the new buses which I've been on, as I say, are excellent in terms of modern day technology, Wi-Fi, phone chargers, cables. It's much more different to what there was, the old single decker United. You'll not remember, you see, Nathan, the old Unite buses, and that's what they used to be called, Unite. United.
The oldest one I was on was one actually in a Arriva Ashington bus, 55 reg it was.
Aye. Well, years ago, I mean, members of my family, sadly, the ones I'm relating have passed on. They used to be conductors, drivers, and on the Unite buses in the area. And that was the big, that was the Arriva at the time, Unite, red single deckers, had double deckers as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all from me. I really appreciate you doing this.
No bother. Well, good luck. I hope it's successful. When you speak to Dennis Fansett, just tell him that I'm asking after him, because he's somebody who I've always, when I've needed any information on the train system,